Hello, how are you? It's Alder and welcome to Glasgow. And for the very eagle-eyed of you, we're in a Premier Inn. However, not for long. We are now on the streets of Glasgow and we are walking towards Glasgow Queen Street station, where we will be catching the 0821 ScotRail service to Oban, Fort William and Mallaig, where we will be travelling along the West Highland line. We will be travelling as far as Fort William. The West Highland line is seen as one of the most scenic railway routes within the UK, some seeing it as the most. While the most scenic section is seen between Fort William and Mallaig, which we will not be travelling on today, the journey which we do is still incredibly scenic and worth the journey, and you will see some absolute wonders, some real hidden gems. So come with me as we explore the beauty that is the Scottish Highlands. Here are some quick facts about our starting point of Glasgow. Glasgow is the busiest city in Scotland. It's also the third busiest city in the UK and the 27th in the entirety of Europe. It's situated on the banks of the River Clyde. Originally, it was a rural settlement by the Clyde, and is now the largest seaport in Scotland. Historically, it is part of the county of Lanarkshire. I definitely pronounced that wrong, but became its own county in 1893. I could say a lot more about the facts and history of Glasgow, but we don't have enough time, and it's not the main point of the video. So, here's Glasgow Queen Street, which is the second major station in Glasgow after Glasgow Central. Queen Street recently finished having some major refurbishment work done, and we fortunately get to experience all the benefits of it, albeit quickly, as we don't have long until we need to leave. The concourse itself is incredibly spacious and really airy, which is good for natural light. There are ticket machines, as you can see, as well as ticket offices. There aren't many eateries except for M&S Food, but you are also in the heart of Glasgow, and there are plenty of places nearby. There's not much else I can say in terms of amenities, but it's really open and great for high capacity. And that's our train zoomed in on the screen, the 0821 to Oban and Mallaig. The front two coaches go as far as Oban, and the rear two coaches go to Mallaig, and they both detach at Crianlarich. We're in the rear two coaches.
821 ScotRail service to Oban and Mallaig, calling at Alder, Dumbarton Central, and ScotRail heads.
Great, just what I needed. And that was our train just being called, which is right here, a 4-coach class 156 unit. To the right you can see one of the entrances to Glasgow Queen Street low level, which is where most of the suburban trains which go through the station but don't terminate. And as you can see, I'm running a little bit. As I've just looked on my watch, there's 1 minute until departure, so I definitely need to get on. And fortunately I haven't missed one of the free train today to Fort William. Here's a quick seat tour. There's not overly much to show. The legroom is really good. There is one 3-pin plug socket per 2 seats, a massive table with a small groove for a cup. You get armrests, and the window one is always fixed in place. In terms of padding of the seat, it's quite rough. It's very similar to all ones from Thameslink in London. It's not amazing for 4 hours. And we're now on the move, on time at 8:21. However, I was still trying to settle into my seat, so I unfortunately didn't notice that most of my recording was blurred.
Thank you for your cooperation. If you see something that does not look right, this will never stop. Refreshments is transport
As you may have noticed in reflection, we managed to move to a window seat, which was quite convenient. Enjoy some lovely screen recorded stuff on my old phone. I was checking if there was Wi-Fi on board, however, as you can tell, there wasn't. I'm not sure if Wi-Fi is normal or not on the services, but it's a bit annoying. Don't worry, as beautiful as these trees are, this is not the scenery I'm talking about for the West Highland line. You can find trees on many train services. For most of the exciting stuff starts after Helensburgh Upper, and you shouldn't see too much footage before then. Currently we're just making our way out of the Glasgow suburbs, and we're just about to arrive at our first station, which is Dalmuir, situated 9 miles from Glasgow Queen Street, and it serves 3 main routes out of Glasgow. Slowly but surely the views do begin to get better. What you're looking at is the River Clyde. You're now looking at bushes, but what you were looking at was the River Clyde with the town of Bishopston opposite. We follow the Clyde as far as about Helensburgh, in which it then turns into several different lochs. During this section of the journey, we share the tracks with the North Clyde line, which is the railway line which serves Edinburgh to Helensburgh Central, with spurs to Mallaig, Springburn and Milngavie, with the centre being through Glasgow Queen Street low level. We share the route from approximately Dalmuir to just before Helensburgh Central, and our next stop on the route is Dumbarton Central. There's not much to say. We're now 15 3/4 miles northwest of Glasgow Queen Street. Service calls are very similar, if not the same as Dalmuir. While the West Highland line runs all the way from Glasgow Queen Street to Mallaig and Oban, I would say that Glasgow Queen Street to Dumbarton Central does not feel as much like the West Highland line, but more the North Clyde line. Time in Dumbarton Central was very brief, and we're now on the move again. I would say that Scotland has some of the most picturesque rail journey views in the whole of the UK, and this is one of my very first journeys on routes which are well known for their scenery. Others I'd like to try and hopefully review in the future are the Settle to Carlisle line, the Highland line, not the west one, the one to Inverness, the Far North line, and the St Ives branch line. And talking about views, aren't they slowly getting better here? Of course, as soon as I say that, bushes appear. I'll leave you for a minute or two to just enjoy the views towards Helensburgh Upper. And here we diverge from the North Clyde line, as these trains go onto a separate route to terminate at Helensburgh Central. And that's a pretty good sign that we're approaching our next stop of Helensburgh Upper.
This is Helensburgh Upper. This train is for stations to Oban, Fort William and Mallaig. The next stop is Loch Lomond.
And each second we get further away from Glasgow. I think it's time that I do a little bit of history on the train that we're travelling on today, which is the Class 156 Super Sprinter. The Class 156 are 2-coach diesel hydraulic multiple units. with 114 sets being built between 1987 and 1989. They were built by Metro Camel at the Washwood Heath Works in Birmingham. 109 units are still in service, with Northern Trains and ScotRail. Their top speed is 75 miles an hour, which is perfect for the West Highland line because the top speed of this line is 70 miles an hour. It was designed to be seen as a more upmarket version to the Class 150, an earlier variant of a Sprinter which is still in service. It's not very well suited to longer journeys. The first units, 156, 401 through to 429, were sent on routes between the north-west of England to East Anglia, such as Harwich to Blackpool and Liverpool, or Norwich to Cambridge. Some services also ran to Birmingham. The remaining 85 were sent to Leeds, Newcastle, Edinburgh and Inverness, and many years later they're still here. Most, if not all of the 156s delivered have stayed within their general regions. Within East Anglia, the northwest, north and northeast of England, and within Scotland, being run by a variety of operators and liveries, especially after the privatisation of the railway network. All of ScotRail's Class 156s were refurbished between 2016 and 2019 to bring them up to the standard set by the Persons of Reduced Mobility TSI, which included a dedicated wheelchair area and toilet, better lighting, and new seats, which definitely has benefits, but it is ultimately very uncomfortable.
We are now approaching Loch Lomond. Please mind the gap when leaving the train.
Loch Head is a town situated on the Loch, one of the many lochs of water around Scotland, especially this part. The loch itself is a popular place for fishing, boating and water sports. Loch Lomond is only a few miles nearby. We'll see a bit more of it later on in the video. One thing you may note later on is how similar lots of remote stations in the West Highland line look.
The next stop is Corrur and Tulloch.
Please do give me feedback on the fact segments as part of my reviews, and whether you like them or not. If you don't like them, let me know, and if you do, please also let me know. I'm happy to hear any thoughts. And on that note, it is time for the history of the West Highland line itself. That took me about 10 attempts to say. Here's the translation in Scottish Gaelic. I couldn't find anywhere online which would allow me to learn it, so I'm not going to mispronounce it. And it means Iron Road to the Isles. The original line was built in 7 sections, with a further extension from Fort William to Mallaig later on. The stages were as follows: Glasgow Queen Street to Cowlairs Junction, Cowlairs Junction to Bowling, I think that's the correct pronunciation in context of the place name, Bowling to Dumbarton Central, Dumbarton Central to Dowrock, Dowrock to Craigendoran, Craigendoran to Fort William, and then Crianlarich to Oban. And the further extension from Fort William to Mallaig was approved in January 1895. The line has risked closures in 1965 from the Beeching cuts and further again in 1995, as it wasn't economically viable to serve this line. Fortunately, neither of these happened. Much later, in 2018, there were proposals to replace the Class 156 units on the line with the only very slightly newer Class 158s, still part of the Sprinter family. However, it turns out that these units don't have sufficient gauge clearance for a line, and as a result, the Class 156 still operates this route. There have always been issues with this line in terms of timings, because north of Craig and Doran, most of the line is single track, apart from at stations where there are crossing loops, and we will see later on in the video some implications this can have. Although at the same time, in the situation that we experience later on, this can also be quite positive. I won't say more for now. Regardless of where you're watching, and if you've been on the line or not, you've probably seen bits of the line from a few films. It's one of the reasons the line is so well known, apart from its wonderful scenery, and the reason they're used in films is probably because of how good the scenery is. The first example is from Harry Potter, where the Glenfinnan Viaduct between Fort William and Mallaig is used for the filming of the Hogwarts Express. Also, Corrur Station is used for scenes of train spotting, as well as being the most remote station on the UK rail network. And now the views really get good, and it's lovely that everyone on board was just looking out the window, taking photos, and just seeing how beautiful it is. I'll leave you be for a few seconds to just look through your screen and enjoy. Very good news, the refreshment trolley has been, and I got a cup of tea because I was in dire need of it at this time of the morning. It was very cheap, although they've gone up a bit in price. Pause if you want to have a look. You may enjoy taking the high road, but I'll enjoy the low road as I'm already in Scotland and enjoying the view. We're passing by Loch Lomond right now, but unfortunately much of the rail journey past it is covered by trees. When you get a 1-second glimpse of it every so often though, it is phenomenal. It's the largest inland stretch of water in the UK, and the second largest by volume after Loch Ness. Also similarly to Loch Ness, Loch Lomond has its own monster as well, appropriately named the Loch Lomond Monster. There are about 30 or so islands within the loch depending on the sea level. In terms of railway connections, there are 3 places which connect with the loch, those being Balloch, one of the termini of the North Clyde line, Arrocha and Tarbert on the West Highland line, and further north, also on the West Highland line, is Ardlui, which is our next station, and we're just approaching.
The next stop is Crianlarich.
Great! More fun views! And we're currently passing by the 2 mountain peaks of Ben Caver and An Castile, both part of the Grampian mountain range. I don't have much else to say, so I'll just let you enjoy the view. Before you reach Crianlarich and the train separates, you can walk through both units, and this gave me some opportunities to try out some new angles between trains. It also means that you can have a little peep from the outside of the driver/guard's cab. The layout of these trains definitely provides some interesting opportunities to experiment with your filming. And we are now pulling into Crianlarich. Although a small station in size, it is a major junction for trains on the West Highland line. And opposite us is the 10:14 service to Glasgow Queen Street from Oban, waiting for us to pass so it can continue its journey. We spend a lot of time at Crianlarich, roughly about 15 minutes from when we arrive to when we leave. The service to Oban leaves first, and as you can see, we are currently moving forward down the platform and then stop again and stay for another little while. I don't know why they do that, but they do.
The next stop is Upper Tyndrum. If you see something that does not look right, speak to a member of staff. 1-6. Reinforce it. See it. Say it closely.
And now we're a small 2-coach train instead of being 4. And that branch line which you now see is the line to Oban. I had actually debated whether to try out the Oban line or the line to Fort William, but there was definitely no way that I'd be able to do Mallaig in a day. When the line diverges at Crianlarich, it runs through Glenlochy to Dalmally and through the pass of Brander, then past Saltwater at Tainault and Connell Ferry, and then a final climb up the hill to Oban. Both the Mallaig and Oban lines serve the hamlet of Tyndrum, albeit at different stations, with the Mallaig line serving Upper Tyndrum, which is our next stop, and the Oban line serving Tyndrum Lower. Tyndrum is the smallest settlement in the UK to be served by more than one railway station. The reason for 2 completely different stations on 2 different lines for such a small village is to avoid incredibly steep climbs due to the contours of the glen. Basically just geography. Tyndrum's Scottish Gaelic name translates to the house on the ridge. Tyndrum is historically known as being a mining centre, and there is still a gold mine very nearby, towards the south and west, by Coninish Farm. Your favourite, we're going on to screen recording mode again. I thought I would share some more detailed information about our journey. So this is the H21 as far as Crianlarich, and as you can see, we are generally making good progress. Only a couple of minutes late. And the front 2 coaches to Oban have only left a few minutes late. However, you'll then notice that the portion to Mallaig, aka our train, left Crianlarich 9 minutes late. And I have to say, it's only going to get worse throughout the journey. Our ETA to Fort William is currently 12:13. I'll just say that didn't happen. I've said earlier that the main issue is due to single track running, and with that in mind, let's have a look at the frequency of the West Highland line and how they manage. From Glasgow Queen Street to Oban, there are 7 trains a day, 6 of which return back to Glasgow. There is an additional 1 train a day from Oban to Dalmally. Out of the 6 services from Glasgow Queen Street to Oban, 3 of them split at Crianlarich and continue to Fort William and Mallaig, therefore making 3 trains a day from Glasgow to Mallaig. There are 3 on the reverse journey back to Glasgow as well. There is also an extra 1 train per day to and from Mallaig and Fort William. Additionally, there is 1 train a night from Fort William to London Euston via Glasgow Queen Street Low Level and Edinburgh Waverley. You'll be seeing a review of that in the next video. There is also 1 train a day from Euston to Fort William. Finally, between Fort William and Mallaig, there is a steam train service known as the Jacobite, operated by West Coast Railways. Between June and August, there is 2 trains a day in each direction, and in May, September and October, there is 1 train a day in each direction. There is 1 freight service a week between North Blyth and Fort William. May I just alliterate that those frequencies are on a Monday to Saturday timetable, and on a Sunday timetable it's much more reduced, but I don't want to complicate things too much. That sounds like a lot of information that I've given you about that, but in practice, the frequency is really low. Anyways, here's another scenery confirmation before we arrive at the Bridge of Orkney. And we are now approaching Bridge of Orkney. I quite like the homely nature of this station. As you can now see, there are some chairs with blankets on them. It's very welcoming, and I've never seen anything quite like it.
The next stop is Rannoch.
Fortunately, the scenery doesn't stop being impressive. I say that, it doesn't for the whole journey. We are currently passing by Loch Tulloch. The loch is approximately 2.5 miles long, and the River Orkney flows from the southeast. There's not much else to say, apart from that the loch contains salmon. And our next station is Rannoch. The area is known for Loch Rannoch and Rannoch Moor. The station has a cafe and visitor centre despite its rural location. And with the number of people waiting, there's good reason why. And here is another one of Scotland's 31,460 lochs, this one being Loch Traig. In 1929 the loch was made into a reservoir, which forced diversion of the West Highland line. Kevin Smith, who is a self-described hermit, lived in a cabin by the loch for 40 years. Anyway, this is a review about a scenic train line, so I'll leave you with another confirmation to enjoy the view. Throughout the journey, I've noticed how much of a community the train has felt like. and that usually feels quite rare in the UK, so it was quite pleasant to see. At least almost everyone, if not everyone, was here to see reviews, to sightsee, to explore. There was a really welcoming and friendly vibe on board, and this included all the staff as well. They all seemed like they wanted to be there. I'd be exactly the same. Working with these kind of views would be absolutely wonderful. It is the complete opposite of a 7 AM commuter service to London. I mean, both have their place. If I'd woken up early, hadn't had tea or coffee, I would not be up to bright and cheery voiceovers. But reviews and the vibe just felt so refreshing. This community was made much clearer once we arrived at our next station of Tulloch. Do you remember when I was mentioning earlier about the low frequency being due to single track running? It's okay if you don't. Basically, we are now so late that we have to wait for another train to pass us, as there's only one line, before we can continue. So the very lovely guard has advised us that we should make good use of this time and get up from our seats, get off the train and have a wander. So that's exactly what I did. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention earlier, as you've seen there, that there are bike racks on board, which are free, but you need to reserve them. Anyway, back to the point. Here we are at Tulloch. I have to say, Tulloch Station is really picturesque. It's so good to stretch your legs when you're on a 3-hour and 50-minute journey that's been delayed by another 40 minutes. But hey, it's still fun with all the delays. Just see how pretty these tiny flower gardens are. I adore them. I also don't think I've ever been on a train platform where you've heard such a noise when walking down it. I love pondering to places aimlessly, taking everything in, so this is like actual heaven to me. Right, let's turn back. We've been advised that the service to Glasgow Queen Street is arriving soon, so it's probably wise that we get back on board, ready for the last few minutes of our journey. Completely random, but looking at this clip reminds me at how nice the ScotRail livery and colour scheme is. Good, we're on board and won't be left behind. Let's head back to our seat. You can tell by the bike rack that everyone's here to either hike or explore. Classic me, forgetting to take the bag off before sitting down. Indeed it is, our next stop is Roy Bridge. And Fort William is quickly approaching. These 4.5 hours of travelling from Glasgow to the Scottish Highlands have probably been one of the best rail experiences that I've ever had. It just felt so much more community based, and with those views, nothing could be more perfect about this journey.
The next stop is Steel Bridge.
And just like at Loch Lomond, we are treated to a lovely view of some trees. It's about 12:30, so I thought I'd go for a quick snack from a premium breakfast. It was great. And our penultimate stop, but not for the train itself, Spean Bridge.
The next stop is Fort William.
And that means that I should probably give my overall thoughts on the journey and the experience itself. I can't remember how much was spent for the journey, but it was definitely worth it. The West Highland line is such a good experience. There is so much joy in just sitting in a seat, however uncomfortable the 156s are, and just staring at the natural beauty of nature that Scotland provides. I think the only thing that could be changed is the seats on the train, as they aren't amazing. But if you travel on the Caledonian Sleeper, as you'll see me do in my next video, the seating situation couldn't be any more different. There's so many things to see on this line, and my final point to say is how refreshing it is to experience this with staff and tourists alike.
Please advise passengers that is us now arriving at Fort William.
Once again, we are very, very sorry that we're getting you here a lot later than planned, but this is due to several speed restrictions in place along the line, and then of course waiting to cross that train at Tulloch. So we are sorry. When you get a chance, please look at the ScotRail website for the delay repay, where you are entitled to compensation. Thank you, and please do enjoy the rest of your day.
I sure did, and what a great start to it. It's pretty clear why the West Highland line is so well known for their views. They are just breathtaking. But I hope that the line is also known for its wonderful customer experience from the staff. Both are just such great factors to why the West Highland line is so popular, and I hope that within the future I get to experience this line again. Maybe one day I'll even go to Mallaig. And here by me is the Jacobite steam train, on a separate journey to Mallaig, but I'll tell you now that I'm not reviewing that anytime soon, maybe in the future. And off it goes, continuing its journey to Mallaig. There's still 90 minutes or so to go, so some people from Glasgow will be travelling on that for about 6 hours. The views are worth it though. Anyways, thank you so much for watching. If you've managed to get all the way to the end, I don't know how, but thank you very much. If you want to like, share and subscribe, you can do, but it's up to you. The most important thing is that I hope you have a good rest of your day. Thank you for watching.